Did you know that the first few minutes after you wake up can quietly decide whether you stay independent at 80 or start struggling before 70? Most Americans over 60 think health problems begin later in the day. They blame dinner. They blame stress. They blame poor sleep. What they don't realize is this: they're damaging their health before they even finish breakfast. Let me tell you about Rick Holloway. At 65, Rick looked like every other working American his age. He drove himself. He handled his own errands. He stayed busy enough. But around him, things started to change. Friends his age began slowing down. One stopped driving after a fall. Another developed memory issues. One more quietly moved in with family after just a small health scare that never fully resolved. By 70, Rick noticed something unsettling. The people around him weren't getting sick overnight. They were fading, slowly, quietly, one habit at a time. Today, Rick is 75. He still lives alone in his suburban home. He drives himself to the store. He manages his own mornings without help. And no, this wasn't genetics. Most men in Rick's family didn't make it past 72. So what made the difference? Not medication, not extreme exercise, not expensive treatments. The difference was what Rick stopped doing and started doing in the first few minutes after opening his eyes. That's it. 5 minutes. 5 minutes each morning that most people rush through without thinking. 5 minutes when the body is most vulnerable, especially after 70. Rick didn't overhaul his life. He didn't chase miracle solutions. He simply changed what happened right after he woke up, while others kept repeating the same morning habits that were quietly working against them. Over time, the difference became impossible to ignore. While others complained about feeling exhausted before noon, Rick felt steadier. While others struggled with balance, blood pressure swings, and mental fog, Rick noticed his mornings were no longer fighting him. When Rick finally talked to his doctor about it, the explanation was direct. Most decline doesn't start with disease, the doctor said. It starts with what happens right after you wake up. And that's the part almost no one talks about. According to data referenced by the National Institute on Aging, the cardiovascular system, nervous system, and hormonal balance are under the most strain in the first hour after waking, particularly in adults over 70. That window doesn't just affect your morning, it shapes your entire day. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what not to do and what to do instead. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss practical tips to help you stay strong and independent. Now, let's start with the first mistake. And I'm warning you, this one will shock you. The first mistake almost no one notices is also the quietest. Rick lives alone now. His wife Elaine passed away years ago. No tragedy that makes the news, no sudden headline moment. Just the slow, ordinary kind of loss that rearranges a life without announcing itself. And every morning, the same pattern repeats. Rick wakes up. He gets out of bed. He moves through his kitchen. He pours coffee. He eats. He listens to the hum of appliances. He watches the clock. He doesn't speak. He doesn't hear another human voice. Not a greeting, not a question, not even a casual good morning. By the time 9 o'clock arrives, Rick has already spent hours inside his own head. Most people don't think this matters. They assume loneliness is about evenings, about holidays, about empty chairs at dinner. But doctors who work with older adults know something most people don't. Morning silence hits the nervous system harder than nighttime loneliness. Here's why. According to research discussed in the Journal of Aging and Mental Health, the brain resets its emotional baseline in the first 1 to 2 hours after waking. In older adults, that reset is slower and far more sensitive to external cues. When there are no cues, no voices, no interaction, no acknowledgement, the brain fills the gap with stress signals. Cortisol rises, heart rate variability drops, the nervous system stays on edge, and once that tone is set, it tends to last all day. Rick didn't know any of this at first. All he knew was that mornings felt heavier than they should. He wasn't sad in a dramatic way. He wasn't crying, he wasn't depressed in the way people imagine depression. He just felt flat, disconnected, unmotivated before the day even had a chance to begin. That's when he thought about Mrs. Carol Nguyen. Carol used to live 2 houses down, 80 years old, always outside in the mornings, sweeping her front step or watering plants. She waved at everyone, spoke to anyone who passed by. Physically, Carol was fine. No major illnesses, no serious mobility problems. But after her husband died, something changed. She stopped going outside in the mornings. She stopped greeting people. Within a year, she stopped answering her phone. Eventually, Carol moved into assisted living, not because her body failed her, but because her spirit did. Her doctor later told Rick something that stayed with him. Social withdrawal didn't follow her decline, he said. It caused it. That statement runs against what most people believe. We're taught that people isolate because they're unwell. In reality, especially after 70, people often become unwell because they isolate, starting with the morning. This is the part doctors rarely spell out clearly. Silence in the morning is not neutral. For an aging brain, silence signals danger. It tells the nervous system, you're alone, stay alert, stay guarded. Over time, that constant low-level alertness wears the body down. Studies referenced by the American Psychological Association show that older adults who experience prolonged morning isolation have higher rates of cardiovascular stress, cognitive decline, and inflammatory markers, even when they appear socially active later in the day. Evenings don't fix it. Once the morning tone is set, the body carries it forward. Rick started paying attention to this pattern. He noticed that on the rare mornings when he exchanged a few words, thanking a delivery driver, greeting a neighbor, answering a phone call, his day felt different. Not happier, steadier, more manageable. That's when he realized the mistake wasn't living alone. The mistake was letting the morning pass without human connection. And the solution wasn't complicated. It wasn't about making friends. It wasn't about deep conversations. It wasn't about forcing cheerfulness. It was about one real interaction before 9 o'clock. One voice. One acknowledgement. One moment that told the nervous system, you're connected. Rick didn't start with phone calls or visits. He started small. A simple, good morning to a neighbor. A short call to his sister. A brief exchange with the cashier at the corner store. Nothing long, nothing personal, just real. And slowly, something changed. Not in his schedule, in his body. Rick began to understand what had been wearing him down all along. It wasn't loneliness, it was silence that was hurting him. After Rick began adding one small human interaction to his mornings, something else became impossible to ignore. His body still felt off. Not as heavy as before, not as flat, but there was a familiar pattern that returned every single day, right after he stepped into the kitchen. Rick didn't think of it as a habit. He thought of it as routine. Wake up, walk to the kitchen, turn on the coffee maker. Before his eyes fully adjusted to the light, the smell of coffee filled the room. Rick poured a cup and took the first sip while standing at the counter. Within minutes, it happened. His heart rate picked up. His hands felt slightly unsteady. There was a faint pressure behind his eyes. Nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just enough to feel uncomfortable. Rick had assumed this was normal. Coffee wakes you up. That's the point. But over time, he noticed something odd. The mornings when he felt the most foggy weren't the mornings he slept poorly. They were the mornings he drank coffee right away. This came up during a routine appointment with his family doctor, Dr. Mark Reynolds. No lecture, no clipboard speech, no warnings. Dr. Reynolds looked at Rick and asked one simple question. "What do you drink first?" Rick answered without thinking. "Coffee." Dr. Reynolds nodded. Then he said something Rick didn't expect. That explains a lot. Here's the part most people never hear. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, the blood is at its thickest point of the entire day. The body has gone hours without water. Fluid is lost through breathing. through the skin, through basic survival processes. By morning, circulation is already working harder than it should. Now add caffeine. Caffeine increases heart rate. It raises blood pressure. It tells the nervous system to speed up. Dr. Reynolds explained it this way. Coffee first thing is like forcing an engine to run before there's oil in it. The engine might start, but damage is happening quietly. This effect is stronger in older adults. According to research summarized in the American Journal of Cardiology, adults over 70 experience greater cardiovascular strain from morning caffeine compared to younger adults, even when consuming the same amount. That strain doesn't always show up as chest pain. It shows up as head pressure, jittery hands, brain fog. A sense of unease without a clear reason. Rick recognized every one of those signs. The mistake wasn't drinking coffee. The mistake was drinking coffee before water. Rick had never thought about hydration as something urgent. He drank water later in the day, with meals, when he felt thirsty. But thirst isn't a reliable signal after 70. By the time thirst appears, mild dehydration has often been present for hours. Dr. Reynolds didn't tell Rick to quit coffee. He didn't suggest supplements. He gave Rick one instruction. Drink 1 glass of room temperature water before anything else, before coffee, before conversation, before the day starts. No ice, no lemon, no special formula, just water. The reason was simple. Cold water can constrict blood vessels. The body needs circulation in the morning, not restriction. Room temperature water moves through the system smoothly. It thins the blood slightly. It signals the kidneys, the brain, and the cardiovascular system that the day has begun. Rick tried it the next morning. He filled a glass the night before and left it on the counter. When he woke up, he drank the water first. Nothing dramatic happened. No surge of energy, no sudden clarity, no miracle. But when he poured his coffee 10 minutes later, something was different. His hands were steadier. His head felt lighter. The tightness behind his eyes wasn't there. Rick didn't feel better. He felt less strained, and that was enough to notice. Over the next few days, the pattern held. Coffee no longer made him jittery. Mornings felt smoother. The background tension he'd accepted as normal began to fade. Rick realized something important. His body wasn't failing him. It had been asking for water before stimulation, and he hadn't been listening. After Rick fixed the silence and stopped shocking his system with coffee before water, mornings felt calmer. But calm didn't mean safe. One morning, Rick stepped into the garage to grab a jacket. The concrete floor was cool. His foot shifted just slightly. Not a fall, not even a stumble that anyone would notice, but his balance slipped for half a second. Rick caught himself on the workbench. Nothing happened, and yet his heart raced. Not from pain, from fear. Because in that instant, Rick understood something clearly for the first time. If he had fallen, no one would have been there. That realization stayed with him longer than the near slip itself. Later that week, Rick met his old friend Tom Jensen for lunch. Tom is 78. Same build Rick used to have. Same habits, same confidence. Tom laughed easily, joked about getting older, said he felt fine. Then Rick noticed the brace on Tom's wrist. Tom waved it off at first. Nothing big, he said. Just stood up too fast. That was it. No ladder, no stairs, no accident scene. Tom had woken up, swung his legs out of bed, stood up like he had for decades, and the room spun. He lost his balance. He fell. 1 fractured bone. 3 months of recovery, and something else that didn't heal as easily. Confidence. Tom stopped moving the same way after that. He hesitated. He grabbed furniture. He avoided being alone too long. Rick listened carefully. Doctors often talk about falls as isolated events. But what they don't always explain is this. Falls don't usually come from weakness. They come from timing. After sleep, blood pools in the lower body. Blood pressure hasn't adjusted yet. The brain hasn't fully synced with movement. In younger bodies, that adjustment happens almost instantly. After 70, it takes longer. standing up too fast causes a sudden drop in blood pressure, what doctors call orthostatic hypotension. But that term hides how common it really is. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65, and the majority of those falls happen at home, often in the morning. Rick had never thought of himself as reckless, but he realized something uncomfortable. He was still moving like his 40-year-old self lived inside his 75-year-old body. That was the mistake. Not weakness, not aging. Timing. Rick asked Dr. Reynolds about it during his next visit. The answer surprised him. "You don't need to be stronger," the doctor said. "You need to give your body time to catch up." No lectures, no fear tactics. Just one suggestion. Create a 2-minute buffer before standing. That's it. Rick started the next morning. When he woke up, he didn't sit straight up. He rolled onto his side. He stayed there for a moment. Then he pushed himself into a seated position, slowly. Feet on the floor, back straight. No rushing. He sat on the edge of the bed for 30 seconds. Not checking his phone, not planning the day, just breathing. Then he began moving, gently. He rotated his ankles, 10 slow circles in each direction. He bent and straightened his knees. He rolled his shoulders back, then forward. Small movements, almost boring, but something important was happening. Blood was moving, signals were firing, the brain was catching up. Only then did Rick stand, and even then he paused, hands steady, weight balanced. The entire process took less than 2 minutes, but it changed everything. Rick no longer felt that sudden lightheadedness when he stood. The brief dizziness he'd accepted as normal disappeared. He added one more step. Before walking away from the bed, he raised his heels slowly. 10 times. Up, hold, down. It wasn't exercise. It was circulation. This simple motion pushed blood back toward the heart and brain, completing the reset. Rick didn't feel younger. He felt safer. Over time, his movements became more deliberate, not cautious, intentional. He wasn't slowing down because he was afraid. He was slowing down because he understood something most people never learn until it's too late. Slowing down wasn't giving up. It was staying safe. After Rick learned to slow his body down before standing, mornings stopped feeling dangerous, but they still felt short. Not in time. In energy. Rick wasn't eating junk food. He wasn't grabbing donuts or sugary cereal. In fact, he was proud of himself for keeping it light. A slice of toast, a bowl of cereal, sometimes just coffee and a banana. Quick, clean, easy, and by 10 o'clock, it hit him every time. Hunger. Not the gentle kind, the sharp kind, the kind that made him irritable for no clear reason. The kind that made small tasks feel heavier than they should. Rick noticed his patience disappeared by mid-morning. Conversations felt annoying. Decisions felt harder. He felt tired again, long before lunch. He assumed this was normal. After all, he was eating less. Isn't that what you're supposed to do as you get older? Here's the part doctors rarely say out loud. The problem isn't eating less. The problem is eating food that doesn't hold you. Rick mentioned this to Dr. Reynolds during a follow-up visit. No lecture, no nutrition chart, just a quiet observation. "What you're eating isn't bad," the doctor said. "It just isn't doing much for you." That sentence stayed with Rick. Food, at this age, isn't about filling the stomach. It's about stabilizing the system. According to research published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health and Aging, adults over 70 who eat low-protein, low-fiber breakfasts experience sharper blood sugar drops within 2 hours of eating, leading to fatigue, irritability, and mental fog. This isn't about diabetes. It's about energy consistency. Rick's mistake wasn't what he avoided. It was what he never added. His breakfasts were designed to end hunger for the moment, not to carry him through the morning. That's why they felt empty. Dr. Reynolds gave Rick a simple rule. Your breakfast should hold you until lunch. Not be healthy, not be light. Not be perfect, just hold you. That meant three things. Something with protein, something with fiber, something with fat, not complicated, not expensive. Rick started small. Some mornings, it was eggs with vegetables, nothing fancy. Other days, Greek yogurt with berries and a handful of nuts. Sometimes oatmeal, but only when he added seeds or nut butter. These weren't diet foods. They were steady foods. The difference showed up fast. Rick stopped feeling hungry by 10. His mood stabilized. The edge disappeared. Tasks that used to feel draining, reading mail, making calls, driving, felt manageable again. This wasn't weight loss. It wasn't muscle gain. It was fuel. Another study, cited by Harvard Health Publishing, found that older adults who eat protein-rich breakfasts show improved attention and reduced cortisol spikes throughout the morning. Rick didn't know the science at first. He felt the result. Mornings stopped slipping through his fingers. They had weight to them. He noticed something else. When breakfast held him, he didn't rush. He didn't snack mindlessly. He didn't feel pressured to push through fatigue. The day unfolded instead of dragging him forward. Rick realized how many years he had spent eating just to get it over with. At 40, that worked. At 75, it didn't. The mistake wasn't laziness, it was treating breakfast like an afterthought. Rick didn't become strict. He didn't count calories. He didn't follow a plan. He simply asked one question every morning. Will this hold me? If the answer was no, he changed it. And slowly, something shifted. Mornings no longer felt like a race against hunger. They had structure. They had steadiness. They didn't disappear before he could use them. Rick began to notice that when the morning held him, he could finally hold the day. By the time Rick fixed his mornings physically, connection, water, movement, food, something unexpected remained. A quiet tension. It showed up before thoughts, before plans, before worry had a name. Rick would wake up and feel unsettled, not afraid, not sad. Just a low background unease that made no sense. Nothing bad had happened. The day hadn't started yet. And still, his body felt like it was bracing for something. Rick couldn't explain it, which made it worse. This kind of feeling is common after 70, but rarely discussed. Doctors call it non-specific anxiety. Patients describe it as restlessness, tightness in the chest, or a sense that something is wrong, without being able to say what. Here's what most people don't realize. This isn't a thought problem. It's a nervous system problem. As we age, the brain becomes faster at detecting threat and slower at shutting that signal off. Even when life is stable, the nervous system can wake up already alert, already tense. Rick didn't need motivation. He needed regulation. Dr. Reynolds didn't suggest therapy. He didn't prescribe medication. He didn't use the word gratitude. Instead, he said something very simple. Before you start your day, check in with your body. Not emotionally, physically. Rick didn't know what that meant at first. So Dr. Reynolds showed him. When you wake up, he said, place your hand on your chest, right over your heart, and ask one question. Not a list, not affirmations. One question. What's going on in here right now? Rick tried it the next morning. He sat on the edge of the bed after his usual routine, feet on the floor, breathing steady. He placed his hand flat on his chest. He didn't say anything out loud. He didn't try to change how he felt. He just asked the question, silently. What's going on in here right now? At first, nothing happened. Then he noticed his breathing, shallow, tight. His chest felt guarded, like it was holding something in. Rick didn't label it. He didn't analyze it. He stayed there for a few breaths. Something shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. According to research published in Frontiers in Psychology, placing a hand over the chest activates the vagus nerve, signaling safety to the nervous system. This response is especially effective in older adults, whose stress responses tend to linger longer once activated. Rick didn't know the science. He felt the effect. The tension didn't disappear. It softened. and that mattered. Rick repeated the practice the next day, and the next, always the same. Hand on chest. One question, no fixing. Over time, he noticed something important. The mornings that used to feel restless now felt present, not joyful, not energized, present. Rick wasn't trying to be positive. He wasn't trying to feel grateful. He was acknowledging that his body was there and listening. This changed how the day unfolded. When stress showed up later, it didn't take over as easily. When something went wrong, his reaction was slower, steadier. Studies from Harvard Medical School note that brief daily check-ins with bodily awareness can reduce baseline cortisol levels and improve emotional regulation in adults over 70, without any formal mindfulness training. Rick didn't feel younger. He felt anchored. That was the difference. The mistake he'd been making wasn't ignoring emotions. It was never checking in at all. Rick had spent years waking up and immediately moving forward, into tasks, routines, expectations, without ever asking how his system was starting the day. Now, he paused. 30 seconds, sometimes less. Hand on chest. One question. The result wasn't happiness. It was stability. And stability, Rick realized, was far more valuable. One morning, after finishing his check-in, Rick stood up and noticed something subtle. He didn't feel rushed. He didn't feel absent. He felt here, not thinking about the past, not bracing for the future, just present in the morning he was actually living. Rick didn't feel younger, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had arrived in his own day. By the time Rick reached this point, nothing about his life looked dramatically different from the outside. Same house, same neighborhood, same age. But his mornings were no longer the same. They no longer rushed past him. They no longer worked against him. They no longer left him feeling behind before the day even began. Rick didn't fix one problem. He reshaped how the morning unfolded. A voice before silence hardened. Water before stimulation shocked the system. Movement before speed steadied his balance. Food that held him instead of disappearing. A quiet check-in that told his nervous system it was safe to begin. None of it took long. None of it looked impressive. But together, these small shifts restored something many people lose quietly after 70. Control. Not control over aging. Not control over time. Control over how the day begins. Rick stopped waking up feeling like he needed to catch up. He stopped pushing his body to perform before it was ready. He stopped treating mornings like something to survive. And slowly, something returned. Dignity. After 70, mornings aren't about productivity. They're about dignity. They're about standing in your kitchen without feeling rushed. They're about moving through your home without fear. They're about starting the day present, rather than already exhausted. Rick didn't become younger. He became steadier, and that steadiness changed everything that followed. If this video helped you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss future tips. And here's the most important part. If this information could help someone you care about, share this video with them. Your parents, your spouse, your friends. This could change their life. You don't need to do everything you heard today. Just choose one thing for tomorrow morning. One small habit. One moment where you stop rushing and start listening. Drop a comment below and tell me which habit you're going to start with tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay independent, and I'll see you in the next.